Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome along to another episode of Beyond the Hustle. In today's episode, I had the great privilege of sitting down with Tim Bateman, who is the owner of O Studio, a business that is centered around hauora, well-being, mindfulness, and all of that good stuff. We had an awesome kōrero. We talked about his experience as a professional rugby player playing for the Crusaders, the Hurricanes, moving over to Japan, coming back and having a second bite at the apple, and then also how he managed to successfully transition out of the world of elite sports into being a business owner. We talked about his relationship with his wife Laura and some of her health challenges that she's overcome and how they became the foundation upon which he's built his business O Studio today. We talked about balance and a whole bunch of other really good stuff. So if that's interesting to you, hang around and join us for the next episode of Beyond the Hustle. Awesome. So, Tim, thank you, bro. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join me and on the podcast. I really appreciate it, bro. Thank you so much.
Great to be here.
Before we get into it, because I know you got a lot to talk about, you got a lot of exciting things going on, which I'm really keen to dive into. But before we do that, tell us who you are, bro. Whatever version you want to tell us, go for it.
So from the West Coast,
Yep.
South Island, tiny little place right at the Grey Valley, called hauora. So in between hauora and Tocha Flat. Yeah, I mean, the first school I went to, there was 12 of us at the school. Dad was the principal, mum was the teacher, my two older brother, older sister, and my little brother. So 4 of us made up a third of the school.
That is small.
Yeah, it was tiny, and the school's not there anymore, actually.
Oh.
That sort of upbringing was very remote until I was 10 years old. So we're sort of on this little, we're in between a couple of dairy farms on this little weird lifestyle block, grew all our own food, and it was a very humble upbringing.
Sounds awesome, though.
Yeah, it was epic. My dad cut tracks in the bush for his job, and for a long time he fell off this cliff, actually broke his back,
Holy, I didn't know that.
and he had to stop going down that route, so he ended up moving into teaching, into school. So, but yeah, we just had a really simple life really over there. I moved into Greymouth, and
Big Smoke.
which it was.
I know. Coming from that into Greymouth, it must have felt like the Big Smoke.
There was like KFC there. I was like, oh my God, there's KFC in this place. It was epic.
Awesome.
But we were about sort of 45 minutes from Greymouth. So we moved into there. I did intermediate and then my first few years of high school, which was awesome. Sport's always been a big part of my life, sort of growing up. And then moved to Christchurch, and now, went through sport. Now I've got sort of two teenage girls, 18 and 16, my daughters are, so right at the other end.
Yep.
Who am I? I guess I feel like I'm a coaster at heart. It's the honest truth. I feel like I'm a family man. Like I love my family. They're the most important thing in my world. And at the same time, I've got a good opportunity in the work that we're doing at the moment that I love too. So a few different things.
Choice, yeah, and we'll get into all of it. Obviously, I first met you in high school. You were a few years ahead of me. I was the same year as your younger brother, and pretty keen footy player back then. And obviously, after school, that carried on. So you had a bit of a stint playing professional sport as well.
Yes, yep. So I played professionally. I played rugby professionally for 17 years.
Wow, that's no mean feat. 17 years.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Hard on the body.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal by the end.
Yeah.
I was pretty lucky. I never had an operation through playing. I had my nose done after I finished, but nothing like while I was playing. So I was quite lucky in that.
Is that rare, do you think, to go that long and not have any like major serious injuries?
I think it's just, like trying to avoid all the contact.
Stand out on the wing.
Yeah, exactly. But it was rare. I was pretty diligent with looking after myself. Yeah. Prepared really well, and my style of play was probably less combative than others as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 17 years. It was a long time.
You played a bit overseas as well, eh?
Yep.
And then came back to New Zealand and finished off in NZ.
Yeah, so I did so my first year out of school was with the Crusaders. Did 4 years. We had some awesome times through the years. We won in 2008, which was epic. And then I was sort of fading a little bit. I felt like I was sort of losing my love for the game.
Really?
This would have been 2009. I don't know, there was just a few things going on at home as well. It was making things just a little bit more difficult. I remember sitting out there at McDonald, and he'd gone over to Japan when he was really young. He was like, mate, just go away for a year.
Yeah.
Take a year away with your family and then come back. You'll be refreshed. So we did that. So we went to Japan. I played 2 seasons in Japan, but missed 1 season in New Zealand, 1 Super Rugby season, and then came back and signed at the Hurricanes. Spent 4 years up there in Wellington, and then Laura got really sick, which we can talk about a little bit later on. We ended up going back. She spent a lot of time in Singapore, and I was going back and forth from Japan while she was in hospital in Singapore.
Wow.
And then I retired from the game, and that would have been 2015. Came home to New Zealand, set up a business because you had to be closer to home for Laura to have a little bit more support around her. And then about a year into retirement, or not quite a year into retirement, Razor actually came in for a float at Cloud9.
Yep.
And
just one of your businesses?
Yes. And he was like, I've just got the role for the Crusaders, I'll come back and play. So I ended up re-signing with the Crusaders for another 4 years.
Got the call up.
Yeah. So it was,
what a story.
It was pretty crazy actually, because I was gutted, like coming back to New Zealand, knowing I was sort of in my prime, but I had to retire. I had to be in Christchurch. They had Sonny Bill Williams, Robbie Froen, Ryan Crotty in their midfield, so I didn't need anyone. I had opportunity to go to every other super franchise in New Zealand, but we had to be in Christchurch.
Got you. Okay.
So I sort of pulled pin on rugby.
Had to make a difficult choice.
Yeah, it was a tough choice, but at the same time, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like anyone in my position would have done the same. And then, set the business up. And then I went from, so literally before Razor came in, I saw his name on the booking. I was like, shit, Razor's going in. Like, I was nervous. It's like got down, did a few press ups, like tried to make out like I was.
Was this before he came to see you?
Before he came
in for a float. Oh,
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I was like, I wanted to maybe there's a chance here.
Get your pump on.
Literally did like 50 press ups at the back before.
Clear the mind.
He's like, you look fit. I was like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fit is. He's like, you've been looking after you. I was like, yeah, just, hadn't touched the ball for like
really
10 months.
Okay.
And he was like, pretty keen to have you back. And then the next day, Colin Cooper rang, and the Māori All Blacks were about to tour to the States.
Okay.
And they were like, just heard that you're coming back. If you can play a game in New Zealand this year, you can come on tour with us. And so I was like, okay.
And what season was it? Super at that time, or was that NPC? Like
Super Rugby finished, NPC had finished.
So final play a game.
There was only 2 games of like rep level rugby happening in New Zealand that weekend.
Yep.
It was Counties versus Northland B. So Counties B versus Northland B up in Northland.
Okay.
And Tasman B versus Wellington B up in Nelson.
And you had to try and get on the pitch somehow.
Yeah. So they had rung the Tasman coach, said, can Tim come and get 20 minutes game time? So I went up to Nelson, played for 20 minutes.
Oh.
And then
they made you eligible.
Made me eligible to be able to play for the Māori All Blacks, because I'd played for the Māori All Blacks lots before. And so then a week later, I was in the US, playing to the US, on the tour, which was just, it was a bit of a, and then we went across to Ireland and played over there. And I don't know, like walking out on the field, I've never been so grateful, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Having almost felt like you lost it, to get it back that second time must have been pretty awesome.
It was like, even just like being on that field pre-game, playing for Tasman B, like walking around, because I always take my shoes off, take my boots off, and just walk around on the field pre-game. It's always been something I've done to feel like I can like ground in the space.
Yep.
And I just remember walking around and just being like, far out, I can't believe I'm back.
Yeah.
I just feel so happy to be back.
That's awesome.
And then it sort of compounded on from there. And there was we played Munster up in Ireland a few weeks later.
Yeah.
And Andy Foley had just passed away, and it was he was an absolute stalwart in Munster and Irish rugby, and we came up with this idea to sort of present a jersey to him pre-game, and so we presented it in a sort of traditional Māori sort of fashion, and I just remember the crowd. It was just like a pin drop. And I've got a quite cool photo of that.
Goosebumps, bro. I remember watching it. Was it Ash Dixon that laid it down?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Ash carried the jersey out, and there was Elliot Dixon, myself, and Matt Proctor. Sort of went out with him, and then hung out with his kids and stuff after the game, which was pretty crazy. But just I've got a photo of that at home, and I just think about that often too. Just how life can change so quickly. Yeah, one way or the other. Yeah. And
so you got your second bite at the apple.
Yes.
And 4 more years.
Yes, I played another 4 with the Crusaders, and then I went up to Japan and did another from sort of 20. So 3 seasons, another 3 seasons up there. So I was actually only going up for the season and then coming back. So I was spending, 6 or 7 months or more, 7 months at home, and then going up and playing sort of 4 or so months up in Japan.
Commuting.
Yeah, well, sort of. I took the girls up all the time as well.
Oh, did you? That's cool.
But it was more, I couldn't spend all my time up in Japan. We had the business going, and I had sort of plans for what we were trying to do next.
Yep.
And so I needed to spend more time in New Zealand, but I was still wanting to keep playing, and sort of scratched that itch for the last few years.
That second bite, 7-ish years, 4 in New Zealand, 3 in Japan. For a lot of people, that's their whole career, eh?
Mm.
Yeah, I can see why you were so grateful to be able to come back and have another career.
Well, it's funny too, because like, and just my mindset to the game was very different as well. Like when I first started, my first 8 years playing in New Zealand for Crusaders and Hurricanes, I had to be starting and I had to be playing well. I had to be in the All Black frame. I was just so driven on like having to be the best, you know what I mean? And
this is how you felt
internally. So if I had a bad game,
yeah,
or if I wasn't selected, or if I was dropped to the bench, it would just be, I'd be like distraught. I'd just be so hard on myself. And we had some real success, and I had some really good success in that window, but I just wasn't enjoying it really at all. I look back on that time and I was just like a ball of stress. After coming back that next time, I chose to stay at the Crusaders, and we had Jake Goodhue and Ryan Crotty as our midfielders, and you often won't carry a midfielder on the bench. So I was like, I know I'm not going to play like I was previously. Like, how am I going to handle this? And for me, it was like a real test of a man. Like, how am I going to react? And I sort of shifted my focus to like, how can I just get the best out of our team? Like, how can I just be the best teammate? If I'm playing, like I think I played about 8 games a season through those years. So I was only a real bit part player, but I had way more enjoyment, and I felt like I genuinely helped our team perform really well. And we won 4 titles, and obviously it wasn't because of me, but we had it's an amazing culture.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was just as much of a part of it compared to when I was playing really regularly.
Yeah. It's really interesting, eh? And being able to, so that second round, it was really about how can I contribute to the team rather than looking at yourself and trying to get the best out of you and then feeling really crap if you didn't perform or something happened to you.
Yeah. And it's not to say that I didn't care about not playing. I wanted to play. I was still competitive. But it was like this, I suppose, a bit more of a balance of compassion alongside competitiveness. Like, how can I actually help Jack be the best midfielder in New Zealand? How can I help Richie be the best 10 going around? How can I help make sure that we keep the team really honest so that come Saturday, they're so set to play? How can I help the culture perform and feel really good where they are? And as I mentioned, it's the reason I say it's like a mark of a man for me. And I still think it's the same. Like, when you're faced with a bit of adversity, the reality is 15 guys get selected. We have 8 guys on the bench who are pretty much a little bit disappointed. And then you have another 15 or so or more outside of that are just gutted. And so how can you get the most out of that group of 23 to 30 people? Because if you can get those 25 people humming and like really giving, then this 15 get a real opportunity. Whereas if you don't get that right, these guys can't perform as well. So how do you put your own ego aside and really prepare the team honestly? So I took it upon myself to sort of lead that for that sort of,
That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, you come to the end of your career, and we'll get into what it is that you're doing now. You're a business owner and stuff, but that transition, I mean, you hear so many stories of people who really struggle at the end of their career in the twilight years. They sort of finish up playing any elite level sport, not just in New Zealand, but overseas as well. How did you manage to sort of make that transition successfully from high performance sport into what you're now doing, which is business? What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome looking back on that?
Well, I think just firstly, I think transition, like we think about what is transitioning. I think everyone goes through transitions in life. They go from, whether it go from high school out into the real world, from one career to the next, out of a relationship into a relationship, or from a relationship out of a relationship. You've got these sort of really unique transitions that happen all the time throughout someone's life. And if you think about it from a sporting context, like I know that you've been involved in sport a lot as well. Like, you think about what's a transition in sport? It's when the ball's turned over. And if you think about that time, it's like the highest risk if you've just turned the ball over, and it's the biggest opportunity if you've just received a turnover, because the defence hasn't had a chance to set. And I think life's exactly the same. It's like you've got this huge risk, but a huge opportunity if you can sort of manage it right. And so, like, what were the things that were hard around transitioning out of professional sport into rugby that everyone goes through? It's quite there is a lot. Like, I'd say, if I could probably break it down into sort of 5 key areas, really. The first one's like physical. You got a big physical change that goes on. You've been in an environment where you've got, nutritionists trainers, your job is literally to lift weights and run and do speed work, and you've got people testing you and helping you. So you've got you're working at your optimum physical ability. When that goes, a lot of people struggle because it's like, what do I do now? How can I maintain? I've got no one keeping me accountable. It's like I've got to find time in my day to work out, because I know that ties to heaps of other things that help for me too. So you'll see a lot of guys change a lot physically after they finish. And
probably mentally as well.
That's the second one. Absolutely. So the second thing is the mental shift. Like you've got mentors, you've got coaches, you've got a real sort of, you've got huge amounts of support in the mental space. And your physical, as you just mentioned, your physical can tie into your mental too. Yeah. So you're going from this highly supportive and challenging environment where you're just feeling super special. To all of a sudden you're like, it feels like it's you feel alone, you feel less motivated, and you've got less people supporting you and helping you out to achieve your dreams. So you've got big physical changes, big mental changes. The third one really is around social. So if you think about it, like a group of rugby players, you've got 40 guys or 30 guys in a team, all pretty like-minded. You have a lot of fun. Yep. You know what I mean? And so you've got these sort of endorphins that are released through a week where you're a bit of banter, you sort of, you've got this, you have similar interests, similar jokes, all that sort of stuff. So you've got you've got a real sort of, you feel really good social. You've got a heap of mates. Like I could go to Japan into a rugby environment and I've got 30 new mates that are just, having a good time together. And so once again, you leave that environment, and whatever environment you go into, it's going to be different socially. So how do you manage those social changes?
So much, eh?
Exactly. The fourth one is financial. You obviously earn a good amount of money while you're playing professional rugby. And if you haven't managed that money right, or if you are going to stop earning that money quickly. And so how do you manage that transition? There's a challenge that goes on there. The last two really, it's probably six, is around the biggest change was like this transit. You've got a real passion and purpose for the game.
Yep.
You've got, you're doing something you absolutely love that you've grown up wanting to do forever. And then that finishes. Like you've had a real clear purpose through a week. I'm trying to prepare for this game. I want to beat that person.
It's really clear.
The team. It's like obvious. War every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you've got this real clear vision of what you need to do. Once again, that disappears. So how do you replace that? And then the last one, which is probably the hardest, is around structure. So it's like, I could tell you when I was playing what I'm going to be eating in 4 weeks' time. Really? Where I'm going to be. You know what I mean? It's that level of structure where you've got your whole day, your whole week, everything's really mapped out.
And who does it for you?
Well, you do it with a trainer or with a coach or with a team. Like you've got a whole year or 2 years or 3 years of knowing what you're going to be doing. And when you've got real structure in your life, it provides a real element of certainty that you can just go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when that structure disappears, it's sort of like, when do I find time to train physically, look after myself physically? When do I find time to hang out with my mates? When do I find time for myself? When do I find time for my family? I mean, even family, like, that you're going to have pretty much a Wednesday afternoon and a Sunday afternoon off in professional sports. So like you've got these windows to spend time with your family. So you make time for that. When all of a sudden you've got like less structure, it's like, how do you find time for your family again? So I'd say there's like each of those 6 things I found slight challenges through all of them. But there are ways to manage those genuinely. Like I think there's ways to transition successfully and take the opportunity that's there.
There's a lot. You almost have to redefine everything. Your social circles, like you said, your roster's no longer there. So you got to kind of create what your week looks like. And I think your point around, if you're essentially being paid to work out and perform at your peak physical performance, and then all of that disappears and your body changes, there must be a huge mind shift at the same time that's connected to your body. I mean, I know that when I've said it lots of times on this podcast, like if I don't work out, I do feel worse. And the opposite is like if I just go for even a run or go to the gym, put in a good half an hour even, I feel much better for the whole day. Take all of that away. Or if that's like your norm and you're getting that every single day and all of a sudden it disappears, it's no wonder so many athletes struggle.
Exactly. And you're right. It's not just rugby. It's every athlete has some sort of battle through one of those 6 things, more so than the other. Like, and it's not like, so I've got like, socially, I didn't have all my eggs in the rugby basket. I've got mates from school that will go away together every year. I sort of, my identity as a person that wasn't wrapped up in the rugby circles. I had good relationships with guys in the game, but all my eggs went in there. So moving out of the game, it wasn't as much of a dip. Because it's funny, like, as close as I was to someone like a Richie Wong or a Jack Goody or someone in the team, as soon as you leave the team, you feel like you're like clinging on. Right. Do you know what I mean? You have this thing like, shit, I don't know if I can message the boys and see if we can catch up for coffee anymore.
Well, I suppose you know how hard it was for you to create social time for other people outside the team, right?
Exactly.
You don't want to be a burden on them.
Exactly. So it's sort of like, so it can become quite a challenge. My recommendation to all rugby players is always just keep really good balance outside of the game.
Yeah.
And it's the same with, mental, physical, social. Like if you can spread your eggs out of the game slightly, then it's not as challenging to navigate.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's great insight, bro. So you did manage to obviously make that successful transition from moving out of that footy lifestyle and into you're now a business owner, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. But why don't you tell us a little bit about O Studio and please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, it's a business that's really centered around wellness, hauora, mindfulness, holistic health. What inspired you to create that type of business? Because you could have done anything. Why did you choose that?
Yeah, well, it's a funny story, really. Well, not a funny story, but often, some of the best stuff comes from some of the hardest stuff. I touched on earlier around our time in Singapore. And so Laura has multiple sclerosis. So she went from being, a national level hockey player, would win, Canterbury cross countries and really gifted physically to, she couldn't run 200 meters, lost her vision.
Can I ask a stupid question? I've heard of multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it. What does it do to somebody?
Yeah. So effectively everyone has a nervous system and everyone has an immune system. And so if you think about your nervous system, like these cords that sort of, that your nerves run on the inside, you've got like a sheath that protects those nerves that run all over your body. So everywhere your nerves go, to your eyes, into your fingers, right down your legs. But you've got this sort of, the core of it really is on your brain and through your spine. So as I mentioned, you've got this sheath called myelin that protects all your nerves.
So the outside of like an extension.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got all the power running through and you've got this protective layer on the outside.
Exactly. And then you've got an immune system that's meant to fight off any type of bad stuff that comes into the body. So MS is where effectively your own immune system thinks that sheath around your nerves is foreign, and so it attacks itself.
Wow.
And so depending on where that attack happens, it'll eat away at that sheath and it'll pretty much short circuit that wire. And so if you've got the nerves that come to your eyes, for example, you can lose vision. So Laura lost vision for a couple of months and her vision's probably back to 60% of what it was. And the nerves that controlled her legs were attacked on her spine. And so she couldn't run. She literally couldn't run. She lost control of her bladder. Like a whole range of different things happened over the course of about 3 years. Our girls were really young. It was a brutal time for us as a family, like really brutal.
Did you say you had the girls at that stage?
Yeah. So
your two daughters?
Two daughters, yeah. So they would have been 4 and 2,
okay.
3 and 1 when it sort of started. Maybe even slightly sooner, but it was like a gradual progression where things started getting worse and worse and worse.
Did you have any idea what it was at the beginning? It just came out of the blue?
It was literally like, I remember one of the first things was like Laura was running and she thought that it was like a person running towards her. So she stopped and like moved to the side, but it was just like wheelie bins. And so her vision's, and then she's like, I'm losing my vision. So she got glasses. And then,
as any natural person would.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And then legs started playing up and sort of one thing after the next started happening. And then went through all these different tests and they diagnosed her with multiple sclerosis.
Gotcha.
And once again, mate, like it was, we would have, she would have slept all night. I would have got up, helped the girls get off to preschool and then go away and train with the Hurricanes, come back, and she would have been asleep all day, just ruined. And so it was just so hard, like having to try and perform, but almost be everything at home too through that window. And it's like if you overlay Laura's health with my rugby performance, it's like a mirror. Like when Laura's health was good, my performances were really good. When Laura's health was poor, my performances were horrific.
Look, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
like, you can understand why.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose, without being too long-winded about the whole thing, that's where OCDS came from. It's like, how do I actually be real present at work and not worried about home? It wasn't as if I was worried about Laura on the rugby field. Well, why is my performance changing so much? I was the same speed, I was the same strength, I was the same fitness. It was obviously just mentally and emotionally, it was eating away at me. And so how could I train that part of myself to be able to be really present and focused and like not have all the stress on me? So that started with things like meditation and learning. I don't know if you've ever tried meditation before.
Tried it. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if I've done it properly. Like I've definitely tried.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to a whole bunch of people who just absolutely swear by meditation.
Yeah.
So why would you not? Like, it's not like it costs money to sit and try and meditate. So, yeah, I've definitely sat silently and tried to focus. I don't know if I've ever unlocked the actual potential of meditation.
Yeah, I was very similar too. Like at the beginning, people that I really respected in sport, in business, I was like, they were all talking about meditation.
Yeah.
And here I was battling with, I was like, maybe this is the thing.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the thing I should lean into. For the first 20 times I did it, I was like, this is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. You know what I mean?
It was
like I'd sit there or lie there for sort of 10 to 20 minutes, and I just sort of felt like I was just thinking about dinner or thinking about this or thinking about that.
Yeah, that's where I get distracted.
Yeah.
And as soon as I feel like my mind's going off, I kind of go, oh, I must have just not been doing it right.
Exactly. The thing that really changed my mindset towards that was actually understanding. It was a bit of an analogy really, but understanding what it's really about. And so if you think about, you're meant to be focusing on your breath. Say you're lying down or you're sitting down and you're just calmly focusing on inhale and exhale through your nose. Every single time you think about something and catch yourself and come back, that's like a rep in the gym to train your mind to be where you want it to be.
Okay.
So if you go for 10 minutes and you do that 20 times, it's like you've just done 20 reps, but effectively it's about catching where you are and being where you want to be. So if you, like, how's it helpful in life? Like, why is it a good thing? Like, if you're on a rugby field, being 100% present and focused means you're going to see more, means you're going to communicate more effectively, means you're going to have a better skill set, you're going to be in a better position to perform on the field.
Which is what you're trying to figure out, right?
Which is what you want to do. You want to be present. You want to be 100% present. And so I find exactly the same thing with work. If I want to be hyper-focused and nail something, being distracted is not helpful. Like, not having control of my own brain, it's not a helpful thing to be. And so, like, meditation was like, I guess, my dip into that.
Yeah.
While we were in Singapore, Laura was recommending a thing called flotation therapy. Well, she went through a big stem cell transplant where they effectively took healthy stem cells out of her bone marrow, blasted her with chemotherapy to kill her immune system. She went into isolation, and they, because obviously with no immune system, if she got any bugs, she would have died. And so she was in isolation for a couple of months, I think it was, from memory.
Could you see her?
I could be in there at the beginning, so I was in there, but I wasn't allowed to leave. So I was with her for like the first 6 days, and then I had to leave,
and then not come back.
No, I could see her through the window and stuff. But
it must have been hard.
It was. So effectively, they had to bot her out of her immune system and then re-enter the stem cells to grow a new immune system from scratch. So hopefully, this new immune system doesn't have that same defect that the old immune system does. There was no guarantees that the old damage would change, like that old damage will be there forever effectively, but hopefully it was like no progression of new symptoms.
Okay.
And she hasn't relapsed since transplant, which is pretty massive.
And it's been years, right?
It's been 10 years.
Wow.
She's, as I mentioned, she still has to manage those old symptoms, but she's been doing really, really well.
It's amazing.
But they recommended flotation therapy for us while we were there. And so flotation therapy, I don't know if you know what that is, but you're effectively...
Well, I've been to Cloud.
Oh, you have too?
Yeah, so I know what it is, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah, but you're effectively, it's like no stimulation on the body. So if you think about that for Laura, where she's got her own immune system attacking her nervous system, it's like, that's where massive fatigue comes from. It's like if we have a thought, it's like a direct flight of nerves that get to where it needs to go along a smooth neural pathway.
Okay.
It's like a direct flight from Auckland to Christchurch. When Laura has that same thought, she's got all these blockages along her nerves. So effectively it has to take all this long route. It goes across to New Plymouth and down to Queensland, over to Greymouth, and then back across to Christchurch. So that's all energy that gets expended. And so they recommend that to her to sort of dampen down that stress response and be able to genuinely relax. So yeah, we did that for the first time in Singapore. I had like an incredible experience, and she had a shocker.
Oh, really?
She had like
It didn't help?
Oh, no, she just like, when I said, you're in your own room, you're obviously naked in your own room and in your own pod sort of thing. And so you push the button to start the session.
Yeah.
and she forgot which button it was that she was meant to push. She was just like, I don't want to push the wrong button just in case someone comes in.
Right.
And she laid back and she splashed herself. So she got salt in her eyes. So it was like this. She's doing 45 minutes, just like
In agony.
and like sore eyes and like
not too dissimilar to mine. Like the first time I went in, I had a cut on my foot, and I just sat. I was just in so much pain. I was, they said, be aware if you've got any cuts. Yeah, it's salt. It's gonna like when you get a salt in a wound, it's gonna hurt.
But you're like, it'll be sweet.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And the whole time, the first time I just couldn't enjoy it because I waited for that blister to heal, and then I went back for the second. The second time was much better.
Yeah. So I got Laura back. By about her third or fourth.
Yeah.
She was like, we have to do this. We have to have one at home. Like we have to. So I started looking at float tanks to buy from overseas and put in our house.
Yeah, because you can't just walk into a shop and buy them, right?
Nah, and they're super expensive and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, this is not going to work in the house. Then I started looking at businesses and saw that actually this is an industry that's growing. In particular, it was growing in Canada. So I was like, should we just do this? And I was like, we're absolutely doing it. And I was like, nah, I don't know if we can. She was like, we're doing it. But it was her that came up with the thing. We're doing Cloud9 Float Club.
Yeah.
It was almost like she had a whole new lease on life post-transplant that she was like, I'm back.
Yeah.
Purpose. Yeah. So
she believed in.
That she believed in, exactly. And so, we opened, it took about, 4 or 5 months to set everything up in Christchurch. And then, we could do 126 floats a week.
Yeah.
If we had back-to-back capacity 7 days a week from 9 in the morning till 10 at night. And we did 120 in the first week.
Did you?
It was just
it's unreal.
It was crazy. It was all like it was so stressful.
Yeah, I bet.
Because we had
everything has to go right for that to happen, right?
Well, it was sort of like we had a washing machine and dryer on site, and we had 15 towels, and we we'd be able to we might get 20 people this week, but it was literally back to back the whole time. So I was in there from 6 in the morning to 11 at night every day, and then but what it showed us, I guess, is we weren't unique in that we were battling. We had health concerns. That was impacting Laura's health concerns, were impacting both of us massively. So finding something that we could look after us and sort of step away from that madness, even just for a moment, was helpful. That's not a unique story. Everyone's got a battle on their hands somewhere, whether it be in their relationship or at work or some health condition or some sort of stress that's impacting their quality of life. That sort of showed us, okay, there is a genuine business opportunity here. So I went back into playing, but I started looking at what was going on sort of internationally and wanted to create a fully decked out wellness studio that has lots of different tools, not just floating. And so, what the outcomes that people were coming for flotation therapy, stress relief, pain relief, better sleep, managing some sort of health concern, just some sort of nice experience, physical recovery because they're trying to do something physical with their life, sort of mental restoration, visualization. So what else can you use to get this sort of stuff? So we started looking at saunas and ice baths and Pilates and yoga and massage and other sort of relaxation recovery tools, and thought, hey, look, what if we just put this all under one roof, And so that's where O Studio came from. And so it's all about sort of bringing it all together.
And floating still happens at O Studio? There's just one part of it though, right?
Part of it, yeah.
And then there's all these other things.
Yeah, so we build those float cabins in Christchurch now.
Do you?
Yeah.
I didn't realise. Oh, awesome.
And so it's changed massively, obviously, over the last, because that's, it was 10 years ago since we started looking at Cloud9. O Studio opened 6 years ago. Started franchising 2.5 years ago. So it's sort of a bit of a blink, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was catching up with you, off camera before we kicked into this, and you're obviously very, very busy. And I think you made a comment, it could go either way. It's you're still right in the thick of it. Every day's still, nothing's promised, nothing's guaranteed, right?
No way.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And I share this all really openly with our owners. What we genuinely feel like we're doing is sort of pioneering this wellness industry. What does wellness look like in a community? Yep. And we talked about it before, but we see it like the fitness industry 50 or 60 years ago.
Yep.
There were sort of whispers that strength is good for you. Do you remember Anchorman?
Yeah.
So,
great movie.
Yeah, great movie. But how he says in there, they're going jogging.
Yeah.
It could be yogging. Maybe it's a silent J.
Yeah. That's how oblivious the world was to something like that.
Physical fitness.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And so that's what that used to be like. So there was no need for gyms back then because no one thought about actually going to do something like that. We feel like there's changes going on at the moment around stress, around sleep. A lot of people are wearing tracking devices on how are they recovering, how are they sleeping, what are they doing to support that. And so if those changes happen, places will need to be there for people to go and visit and use it to support that too. So we're sort of positioning ourselves in that space. But once again, we don't know that.
No, nothing's guaranteed.
Nothing's guaranteed. I mean, the studios that are open have got pretty awesome sort of stuff going on. Like our studios average about 70 new paid visits a week at the moment.
That's awesome.
So like first time customers coming in to try a float or a sauna or an ice bath or a class or something in an economy that's meant to be quite poor, you know what I mean? But we've tried to build good price points, private communal areas to cater for lots of different types of people.
And a big part of, I guess, building this demand is just educating people, telling them what it is. Because you're right. I mean, I've got one on at the moment, but I know there are people that are wearing things and tracking their blood sugar levels.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of things that we weren't paying attention to even 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. Everyday people now are interested in that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, once again, for some people, it's all around performance. They're trying to scrape that extra 1 or 2%, either on the sports field or in business.
Yeah.
For others, it's like, I've just got a busy life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to just have something that I'm dedicating to myself.
I also know people that haven't had a genuinely good night's sleep in 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what a good night's sleep does. So if visiting a place like a wellness center like O Studio and learning about just trying some stuff out, and if you find one like Laura did with floating, if you find something that is like the cheat code to fixing this problem, I mean, that's life-changing.
Oh, exactly. And so like, the big popular one for us at the moment is sauna and ice bath.
No, yeah.
Like just how heat can support sleep, for example. How ice early in the day can support sleep later on in the afternoon, and how you can use those sort of tools.
It's cool, man.
Yeah, it's quite cool.
Awesome. Oh, fantastic. Mate, like anyone watching will be able to pick up, like you're a lot of things, because you're a husband, you're a dad, you talked about your 2 daughters, you're a business owner. And judging by everything that you've already said so far, it appears as though a very driven individual. How do you find balance? And what I'm really trying to ask is, because I also wear a lot of different hats, I really personally struggle to find any balance. It's this idea that I've read a lot about, and people talk about work-life balance, and I honestly feel a lot of guilt because I just can't seem to strike the balance. And at the moment, in this sort of season of life, I'm focusing so much on work and grinding and working hard, and the only reason I'm able to do that is because Jess just does such an amazing job at home and takes care of our whānau. But I just haven't managed to crack the code around balance. But what are your experiences or thoughts around this thing that people call balance, work-life balance?
Man, I think we could talk about this for like 2 hours just alone, because I've got lots of different thoughts on it, genuinely. If you're trying to be high performing, how do you think you can compete if you can put 20% of your time into it?
Right.
You know what I mean? How do you think you could compete with Richie Mo'unga to be the best 10 in the world if you're also trying to be X, Y, Z everywhere else? Can you actually think you can compete? I think that's almost
pretty arrogant.
It really is. And so if you think about business even, if you want to be the best at whatever it is that you're doing, you're better off putting all your time and energy and focus into that. And I know this sounds counter to this other side that I'm more than happy to talk about too, because I genuinely think that getting the other side right and getting a bit of balance in your life can actually help you perform. So if you're trying to compete with Richie Mo'unga, it's to be the best 10 in the world, living and breathing rugby every single day of your life is probably not going to be that helpful. So how can you support that in some way by getting balance, whatever that looks like for you? But I think there's a bit of misconception around if you really want to be good at something. If you wanted to be the best dad in the absolute world, if that was, that everything to you was being just the best dad you could possibly, and nothing else really mattered, I guarantee you'd be doing things slightly different.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean? And so but then in the long run, that probably wouldn't be the best thing, just saying no to everything else and just dedicating your time to your kids. Yeah. It probably wouldn't be the best role model for your kids too. So they're learning different things in different ways as well.
Yeah, there's always trade-offs.
Yeah, exactly. Right? The way I like to look at this is glass and rubber balls. Have you heard that sort of analogy before?
Nah.
So it's all we're always all juggling different balls. As you mentioned before, for myself, my relationship with Laura is really important to me. It just is. It's something that, we've been together since we're 15 years old. I love her more than anything. And so spending time like fostering a healthy relationship with Laura is important. That's a ball that's sort of always up in the air being juggled. Sometimes it's a glass ball, but sometimes it's a rubber ball. I've got to drop that and it will bounce back up in my mind because I've got to catch something else that's more important at the time. So my relationship with my girls, same sort of thing. They're so important to me, more so than I'd imagine anything else to ever be. But at the same time, there's times where they can't be a glass ball all the time because there's something really pressing personally or there's something really pressing with business. So for me, it's understanding that you've got different balls and sometimes they're glass balls and sometimes they're rubber balls. But I think wisdom comes in when you can realize that actually you can't have what is meant to be a glass ball always rubber ball. It won't always bounce back up. So you've got to be able to sort of switch them in and out at the right time. And so, the reason why O Studio is an O is because it's balanced. Mm-hmm. It's sort of complete. It's connected, and it's it's a strong shape. So what we're trying to get people to think is like, what does that look like in your life? What does balance look like in your life? What is connected? What is complete? What does sort of strong mean to you? And find what that means to you. Because as you mentioned, that could change through a week. That could change through a year. That could change through a season in your life. I don't think it's realistic to always have perfect balance across every area of your life. I think it's around that sort of rubber and glass ball analogy for me is important. The reality is at the moment, my girls are 18 and 16. They don't love hanging out with me all the time at the moment.
As much as you probably want them to.
As much as I'd love to. Yeah. But the reality, so that means it's sort of, I can shift a bit of my time and energy into something that's business at the moment is like, what I spend. I don't have enough hours in the day to focus on that. So it's sort of, what do I do with my relationship to make sure that I don't drop that ball while I'm really focusing on this?
So is it about trying to recognize all of these different balls that you have to try and juggle when you start to realize that a rubber ball becomes glass? In other words, it's very brittle. You can't afford to drop this ball right now. Is it about just kind of refocusing and going, okay, I've got to spend a bit more time over here?
Yeah.
Is that the trick?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And also so for example, with Laura, once again, I value our relationship. So there's certain things like baseline things that we'll do and nothing will change it. So every second Wednesday we'll get lunch together and every other Tuesday we'll go out for dinner together.
So funny that it's Tuesday. Everyone I talk to, it's a Tuesday night.
Really?
Oh, I don't know what it is about Tuesday. Every business owner I talk to, they're like, it's Tuesday night. Yeah, it's just funny. It's always Tuesday.
Oh, anyway, really? It's funny.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's like locked in.
Yeah,
like
cool.
Every second Tuesday and every second Wednesday, like every other week, we're doing something together. And that's like, once again, that's not the cornerstone of our relationship. No. But it means that like at least once a week, we're spending like dedicated time, just the two of us, catching up on different things. Like that's one of a few things that we'll do in our relationship to sort of make sure it's always there. It's the same with floating fest. I float at 2:00 on a Wednesday. And I know that for me is like, I perform better when I'm doing that well.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Same sort of thing, like training, doing something hard in the morning for me sets me up for the day. Like it just does. If I've like hurt myself in the morning, you know what I mean? I've gone to some dark place. Every other dark place I have to go through the rest of the day is my dark. You know what I mean? If I've done that. So there's a few things like I lock in because they're like priorities for my own health. Like health is a glass ball.
Yep.
You know, it just is. And like, what do they say? Like a healthy person wants 100 things and an unhealthy person wants one. You know, it's like,
be healthy.
It's not, it's when you lose it.
Yeah.
Like Laura would give anything to be what she was like physically prior and mentally, she would give anything for it. And like, it's not until you lose it that you realize how important it really was. And so finding ways to just make sure that it's like a non-negotiable, whatever that looks like for you, to be physically healthy for yourself, for your family, so that you can get the most out of life. I think it's a fundamental one. And for me, because I'm pushing so hard at one end, I have to build stuff that supports that at the other end, or else I'm just going to push myself into an early grave, and that's not helpful for anyone. So finding ways to get that balance right is important, and locking it in.
It's quite a nuanced topic, eh? No, those are really great insights. Yeah,
How do you do it? What do you do?
I don't know. I haven't figured it out, mate. Honestly, like the physical health thing, there was a period of time in my life where I just let it go, and I didn't focus on anything physical. I was fit when I was 18, 19, 20. And then there was a few years where it's sort of just, kids and business and life gets busy. And then it was about 2-3 years ago where I just kind of felt like I was unhealthy, genuinely. And I was like, I'm not young anymore. I've got to do something about it. And the last 18, probably two years really, getting back into the gym, exercising, eating better food has been transformational for me, but also for our business, because I'm just way more focused. Yeah, but like I said to you, at the moment, super focused on our business. I can only do that because, I guess to use your terminology, my whānau is not a glass ball at the moment. Like, things are really good. The kids are really, they got some really cool after school activities. Jess is in a great spot. So I can afford to not take my eye off the ball, but I can afford to lean into this and go hard on this, on the business stuff.
Do you know what I find? Because I know lots of people like you who are just very driven, want to create something good in the world. You know what I mean? You've got like aspirations, and you can sort of see where you could take things. Yeah. As like, I don't know, as like people like yourself, and I'm very similar, taking a step back feels like it feels like you're wasting time. It feels like, you mentioned the word guilty before, like it's guilty if you're spending time on yourself. It's like, there's a sort of, I think, a misconception of like taking a step back as a weakness, as like I see that as performance. I see that taking a step back, whatever that looks like, a walk, doing something in the health and fitness space that actually is offsetting stress, actually helps you perform. Like, I was listening to a really cool discussion around this the other day, but around like people trying to lose weight, for example. One of the biggest things that holds weight on people is stress. So like one of the best things you can do to lose weight is actually be in a less stressed state. When your body's in a stress state, it's pretty much telling you that there's a threat somewhere. So what is your body doing? It's storing fat for some potential bad thing that's coming. It's because there's a horizon. You know what I mean? So like, there's really good studies around stress and weight. There's like how putting your body into like an acute form of stress through something like exercise or something like an ice bath can actually offset chronic stress, which is the bad one. Which is the bad one, exactly. And so it's how do you get out of like a chronic stress state? And you can do that through a 3-minute breathing exercise. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science stuff, but finding little regular times where you can get yourself out of that stress state so that you can think more clearly, so that you can be more creative, so that you can communicate more effectively, so that you can solve more problems. Like, those are things that are really valuable. But I think a lot of people that are really driven, like myself, like yourself, and like lots of people that you'll know, it's almost like anything like that is wasted time. It's a step back, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And when you're, as you say that, Jess and I have talked about this a lot. We're fortunate to go to the States about a year ago, maybe a bit longer. And we've done a few trips here and there as a whānau, and they never really feel like proper holidays because, I'm the guy that's constantly standing at the theme park or whatever, and I'm replying to emails, and it's a bad habit. But when we're in the States, because of the time difference, there were about 8 hours of the day while we were in the States where New Zealand was asleep. So literally I couldn't get a response even if I tried. And so for those 8 hours, and I didn't recognize it until about day 5, I was like, man, those days or those hours, I'm actually present and hanging out and doing really cool stuff. And we came back and I said to Jess, I think we need to do that more often, because we've done Australia and we've done other things, but going over the other side of the world and actually not being able to call someone and say, or even there was no potential, unless the restaurant was on fire in the middle of the night, there was nothing that could have gone wrong. So I was actually able to enjoy Disneyland or whatever it was. And when I came back, I actually recognized myself. I felt better. I felt more recharged. And so I don't know why I figured that out then, but then have somehow fallen back into my old habits.
Oh, it's not, at the same time, you can't be out. Like, no one's got this stuff figured out. We all understand it. And I just think it's unrealistic to think you could ever be perfect. You know what I mean? I'm exactly the same. Like, I'm not the picture of health by any stretch. Like, I work, and I love working, don't get me wrong, but I could work, 80 to 100 hours in a week, some weeks, just as soon as I'm up to, I might work for 2 or 3 hours, take 30 or 40 minutes off to go and do something physical, straight back into work, and it's straight back in again. And so, like, I'm definitely not that. You've got to be realistic with life. But I think the thing that I sort of think about often is I don't want to look back and be like, I've just, driven myself into an early grave lost my health because I wasn't really conscious of what I was doing, and then just not enjoyed it, like not enjoyed the actual process, like I think stepping back and reflecting and taking time for yourself, you actually enjoy that journey way more too. Which for me is just as important as the outcomes. Like I've been in plenty of successful rugby teams that weren't that enjoyable.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like getting the outcomes that you're after is one thing, but actually loving it, that's just as important. And so, yeah, I think it does help with that.
Yeah, no, it's great. Just looking at the time, we've been talking for a long time.
Sorry, bro.
No, I've loved it. I've really, really loved it. I'm just conscious of your time. But final question, and it kind of ties into what you just said. Success. We talk a lot about success. I don't know about everyone else. I've certainly got a bit of a vision or a bit of an idea of what success looks like for me at the moment. And it will probably change over the next period of time. But I'm interested to know what does success look like for Tim Bateman right now?
I think I could probably only answer that through, those different sort of balls, I guess. Like success for me is being physically, mentally healthy. And it has to be, like, as I mentioned, that's like the foundation. It's the vessel through which you travel life, and so if I'm not looking after that, it's like someone was talking about this the other day, like if you had one car for your whole life, like how you'd look after that car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you'd look after that car really, really well. You'd drive way more safely. The reality is we get one body, one mind for our whole life.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to look after it?
Yeah.
So that's success for me is being physically and mentally healthy. Relationship, like my core relationships with Laura, with my girls, with my close friends. What am I doing to make sure that they're valuable to me? That there is a measure of success. Like how good are my relationships? And then thirdly, at the moment, it's us as a business. Like what am I doing daily, weekly, through the course of a year to make sure that we're sort of moving closer to our mission, that we're working hard but enjoying that journey along the way too, because we've got some cool opportunities.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's success for O Studio would be that, we've got a good number of locations that are just servicing communities' wellbeing around the country and potentially internationally. Yeah.
Awesome. It's exciting. Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate your time, mate. And I know I said it before, I'll say it again. I know how busy you are. I know how many balls you're trying to juggle at the moment. So taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk to me, I really appreciate it. Don't take it for granted. So thank you. If people want to come and find out more about you, about O Studio, where's the best place to go?
Oh yeah, Shivers. Well, go to O Studio website is probably the best.
Yep.
We've got 4 locations currently around New Zealand. So Takapuna, Christchurch, Rolleston, and Remuera up in Auckland. Queenstown's about to open in a couple of weeks' time, and then we've got another sort of 4 or 5 opening this year up until October.
Unreal.
And so there should be a location sort of close enough to someone that they can go and check it out. Hamilton's opening, Mount Maunganui, Wellington, Hawke's Bay.
Fantastic.
And so for me, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to scare you to be worth it, right?
Yeah, and it scares me because we've got great people that are putting time, effort, money into creating something unique in their areas, and we're supporting them to do that, obviously. And so I just want it to go well for them. I want the customers to walk through the doors of O Studio and be like, oh man, this place is like awesome.
Yeah,
I'm getting what I'm after. And so to get that outcome, there's just so many little things that you've got to get right, and there's so many things that can hurt that along the way. And so, I mean, I definitely recommend just checking a place out at some stage. Try a few different things is what I'd recommend. Like floating's not for everyone. I love floating. A sauna and ice bath, it seems to be for a lot of people, but some people want to be with strangers and have good conversations in an interesting environment. Other people want to be by themselves, and so we have private and communal rooms and stuff. But I'd say try lots of different stuff and find something that fits in with your routine, because we get one shot, so look after yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it, bro. It's great to see you again. It's been a long time between drinks, so it's great to reconnect and hear about all of those wonderful things. I learned a lot today, actually, just hearing about some of your insights around footy. I really enjoyed. You gave me a lot of perspective that I hadn't thought about before, and I'm really excited to hear about O Studio, where it's going. Talking about all these different locations, I love it. It's the sort of stuff that I know how hard it is to get to that stage, and I just totally admire you. Everything that you're doing, the fact that you have such a strong relationship with Laura, your girls, to do all of that and to hold it, and to keep it so tight is so hard, man. so many people don't get that right. So so much respect for you, bro.
I really appreciate it, and like I definitely don't have it all sorted.
That's the reality. No way. You know what I'm...
But right back at you, man. Like I've watched you closely from afar, you know, for a long time now, and I love what you do, genuinely. In fact, I was talking to Maddie, my business partner, who he knows you well as well. You've spoken to him a couple of times, and he's like, we've got to get you on our podcast, actually. Yeah, and so
cool. Love to
return the favor,
love to,
and do a recording, because I think you've got a cool story to tell as well. So, yeah, I think you're doing some epic work.
Awesome, bro. Should we leave it there, eh?
Still,
you got stuff to do. All right, I appreciate you guys, and thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Until next time, ngā mihi.